Welcome back, everyone. It is good to see you all. I am excited to talk about wilderness medicine today. I've actually got a couple of wilderness medicine videos coming, which I find super enjoyable. Some topics just sort of came to me. One of them is this. I get so many comments, questions about this little item. Why don't I carry it? Why I'm crazy to not carry it. Yeah, this is a tourniquet device. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about some things you probably don't know, some misconceptions about tourniquets, when to use a tourniquet, when not to use a tourniquet, how to use a tourniquet, and dig deeper into why I don't carry a tourniquet. And we'll discuss all the people who think I'm crazy. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. It is good to see you all. This is a cat commercial tourniquet device. This is about 30 bucks. I got this on Amazon. It was delivered the next day because, yeah, I bought it mainly to talk about in this video because, as I said, I don't really carry one. When I build a first aid kit for someone, I do put one of these in that first aid kit. This is big first aid kits for like doing crazy stuff, mainly for peace of mind. I don't want them worrying about it. They've got it if they need it, but chances are they're not going to need it. You definitely, if you think you want to carry one, should buy one as opposed to improvising one. Those tend to do a lot more damage than these do. If you're using this, there's already a lot going on. This is faster to deploy, safer to deploy. Yeah, all those things. So let's talk about a couple myths. First is the likelihood of usage, which is really, for me, is the end-all be-all. The likelihood of you needing this if you are a hiker, a backpacker, a paddler, a mountain biker, yeah, the likelihood is pretty slim. If you work with guns for a living, or chainsaws, or axes, or even some power tools, then you might want to just throw one in your first aid kit, or your toolbox, or whatever, so that it's handy. I think that that's not a bad idea if you have one of those professions. But for normal people doing stuff in the outdoors, you are gonna need blister care. You're gonna need sunscreen. You are not gonna need this. Okay, so why is there so little likelihood? And the fact is that the vast majority of bleeding wounds are stopped with direct pressure. And I don't mean like 60%, I mean like 98.9%. I don't have data on that, but we know the vast majority, close to 100%, are handled with direct pressure. Then if direct pressure isn't cutting it, then you could go to something like a pressure dressing. I'm not going to show you how to do a pressure dressing right now. You can do it a lot of ways with a lot of different materials. Take a WFA course, which you should do anyway. But then on that course, you'll learn how to do a pressure dressing. If that doesn't work, then you would go to something like this. So that's a lot of things that you could do before needing this. Yes, as some people say, they're not very heavy. I don't know how much this weighs. Let's find out.
A few moments later.
Just checked, 2.95 ounces or 83 grams. It's pretty light. It's so light, why not just carry one? Because I'm never going to use it, you know? So, yeah. Yeah. I had a guy in a WFA course who said, if you can carry one, you can carry two. And then I asked him how much his backpack weighed, and he said 80 pounds. And I was like, there you go. I don't see the usage need for this product. But as I said, with those other caveats. And then I checked with Knowles, and since 1965, their records, which are very meticulously kept, show 0 uses in the backcountry. That's about 4,000 students a year over, I don't know how many years that is, 65, that's 60 years. Over 60 years? Yeah, so in 60 years, they've never used one. So I don't carry one, but as I said, I do put them in the big first aid kits that I sell. Another thing to keep in mind, this is a single-use item. besides the fact that you're not likely to need it, the thought of needing it twice, but the first thing is that if it goes on a patient, you're probably not going to get it back because it's going to stay on the patient until they get to a hospital where it's removed. So you're probably not going to get it back. The next issue is I don't think the materials are designed to be cleaned in a manner that if they get bloody, that this is not a biohazard, right? And so there's no way to sort of re-clean it to get it factory fresh and put it back in your first aid kit. And then the third problem, this was pointed out to me by another person, a medical professional, who was like, he didn't think that the materials themselves were designed to be used under that stress and then reused. The nylon, the plastic, the Velcro, and he likened it to a climbing rope that once you take like a big leader fall, you're probably going to end up retiring that. So it's similar to that single-use item. That said, only about $30, so not a big deal if you do use it. Let's talk about when to use this. If you have rhythmic spurting of blood, that's an artery that is spurting with the beats of of your patient's heartbeat. That's an indicator that you're going to need this. If you see pooling of a lot of blood and then you cover it with gauze and it just pours right through, that is probably too much blood flow for you to use something like gauze or maybe even a pressure dressing, but I would try a pressure dressing first. Those are the two instances where you would use this. Now, obviously, if you've got spurting blood from a torso, you can't use it. If you've got spurting blood from a neck, you can't use it. You're just going to use direct pressure. I do like to make jokes on WFA courses about the neck tourniquet. There are definitely some patients and some students that I'd like to use a neck tourniquet on. No, don't do that. You can't. There's no such thing as a neck tourniquet. So that's when you would use it. But keeping in mind, the vast majority, as I said, 90-something+ % of bleeding wounds are going to be stopped with direct pressure. Now, who should carry this? I think that, as I said, if you work in law enforcement, if you work with chainsaws, if you work with axes, if you work with power tools, I think that these are great things to have and they should be in your first aid kit or in your toolbox. Though I will say I worked with someone once who had done a call to a guy who had cut his thumb off with a circular saw and he didn't need a tourniquet. So there you go. Okay, how do I use this thing? This is pretty much ready to deploy. It is designed to be used one-handed. If the wound site is here, it should be 2 to 3 inches above the wound site. If that puts it in a joint space, don't put it in the joint space, put it above the joint space. So this goes on here, find the end. There you go. This is called a windlass. I'm going to tighten this until the bleeding stops. I am not going to go more than one on me, and I can already feel a loss of blood flow in my hand. Then I'm going to take this white tab, pull it over here to lock it in place, and I'm going to write on here the time that this was applied, because you're not taking this off. If you put a tourniquet on someone, you are not removing it. In the past, they talked about opening it, letting in some blood flow, then closing it again. You're not doing that. If you're putting it on, you're leaving it on. This is coming off in the emergency room, probably with a surgeon standing by, or in the operating room with a surgeon ready to go. I'm going to take this off now because I can't feel my hand. So this is a commercial tourniquet device. Pack one if you will sleep better at night, and I'm sure someone is typing a comment right now that says, I pack one because you never know, right? And that brings me to another point. I don't carry one because I don't need one. I don't carry one because I have never, in 30 years of adventuring in the outdoors and 5 years on the ambulance, ever used one. The stuff that I am doing really would have a hard time creating a wound that would require one of these. The vast majority of injuries, do not require a tourniquet. This is where I get comments and emails. You should totally be wearing one. And really what prompted this, or part of what prompted this, was a couple weeks ago I got an email where a person was like, hey, it was a first aid kit video I did a few weeks ago. Hey, great video, really great. We're going to have to agree to disagree on the tourniquets. Not only should you be carrying one, but it should be ready to be deployed. Now, he did explain that he was law enforcement. And in that situation, I think that that makes sense, where you could be dealing with gunshot wounds or something like that. I should add, I've dealt with gunshot wounds when I was on the ambulance, and I didn't need a tourniquet, but we'll just leave that over there. But I don't work in law enforcement, and I don't run into gunshot wounds. And yeah, paddlers generally are not getting injured in a way where this is going to be necessary. To which the people then respond, not this person, but everyone's like, but you don't know, right? It could happen. Yeah, so the likelihood of me needing this precludes me from carrying this. We are more and more using fear to prepare for things. And that I find really troubling. A lot of what we're told in the course of a day is things to be afraid of, right? Which is where things like this come in. I can tell you all day long, the likelihood of you needing this is almost zero. To which someone will say, yeah, but it's not zero. And what if? And there's so many things like that. If you walk down that what if path, we would never leave our living rooms. We would never go outside and have amazing adventures, right? And so you can't prepare for absolutely every problem, but you can be prepared. So I don't want fear to be the limiting factor when you're doing stuff in the outdoors. Now, yeah, do you need to have a first aid kit? Absolutely. Will I shun you if you don't carry a first aid kit? Probably to myself, similar to the way I am about PFDs or bike helmets, right? You should absolutely be wearing a bike helmet. You should absolutely be wearing a PFD, even if you don't perceive a risk, right? The likelihood, though, of you getting into a bike accident is far higher than you ever needing one of these. The likelihood of you rolling out of your kayak in unexpected bad weather is far higher than ever needing one of these. But that said, if you sleep better at night or paddle better during the day, having a tourniquet in your first aid kit, pack it in your first aid kit. Okay, that's all I got. I'm going to put this not in my first aid kit. It's going in the med bin in case I need it. I'm still looking for the perfect case for the ultimate expedition first aid kit, in which case that will go into that expedition first aid kit. If you found this enjoyable, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. Soap Note for wilderness first aid or for any first aid is available on Coffee. I think it's $1 or $1.99 or something like that. Also there, if you want to help support the channel, are my books, The Guide's Way, which have wilderness medicine sections. Both the outdoors version and the sea kayak version have wilderness medicine sections. That's essentially tips and tricks from 20 or 30 years of working in the outdoors that I compiled with a bunch of friends. It's like a 3-page PDF, well over 100 tips and tricks. Super useful. Cool. Go outside. Have great adventures. I'll see you on the water.